Hello, everyone. We have Sanjiv Augustine today with us. And Sanjiv is the founder and CEO of Lightspeed, which is a consulting company that does training in Agile, AI, and much more. He's an expert in Agile, Lean, and digital transformations. He is also the co founder of PMI Agile Community of Practice and Agile Leadership Network. He is also the author of books Managing Agile Projects, Scaling Agile, and also my favorite, PMO to VMO. Welcome, Sanjeev.
Thank you, Sneha. Thank you for the invitation. Happy to be on the on this session with you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. I would love to hear your story. Can you talk about your journey to becoming a successful founder of your company?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that question. So it's been a long, fulfilling, and rewarding journey. I actually started about more than 30 years ago in the field. I started as a software developer and engineer, so I come from an engineering background. And then I did a master's in computer science. I worked as a developer. And many of the early projects that I worked on were really value focused and focused on customers and delivering outcomes to our customers. And I'll give you an example. About 30 years ago, I worked on a defense project. We had a lieutenant colonel who was our customer. We would meet with him every day. It was a small team of us. It was an integrated team, and every day we would check in to see how what we were doing related back to what he was looking for as results and as output that he needed, and also outcomes in terms of what he wanted to achieve. And so I got used to working in this very fast, adaptive way on a high performance team. And then later on in my career, what started to happen is as I worked on other projects and worked with other organizations, I started to see a lot of inefficiencies in how things were done. They were what we call what the agilists, early agilists used to call monumental methodologies. That it was all about generating these huge documents and artifacts. There was something called the rational unified process in those days, and we would use a tool called rational rows, and you'd create all this stuff, and nothing that came out of rational rows actually helped us deliver value to our customer. Maybe it enabled some of it, but it was not really focused, and it was very sort of heavy and in those days, it was all within the concepts of waterfall development, phase based. And then along came agile methods, and agile methods were about that early way of working that I experienced. It formalized that. It said, well, you work with your customer, you work in short iterations, you get feedback, you look at optimization, and you constantly adjust and adapt what you're doing to outcomes. And so I went full-fledged, full bore into agile methods. Enjoyed all the work I was doing, and started to develop my own philosophy of agile management. That's where my first book came out, which is Managing Agile Projects. And it was basically saying, you don't need a huge Gantt chart. Maybe you do just at the very high level. What you can do is you can have progressive elaboration, which is a standard project management concept, and we can start to meld or integrate long-term release plans with short-term iterative iteration plans or sprint plans. And so I started to create that bridge of ways of working within agile teams or ways of managing agile teams and helping people make that transition over from traditional project management to agile project management. And that was my first book, Managing Agile Projects. And then we worked with some customers, like in those early days with Capital One, helped them scale agile methods across 5,000 people in 3 countries and lay out their first foundation of agile methods. And the work that came out of that I captured in another book about 10 years later, which is called Scaling Agile, a Lean Jumpstart. I found that as we're looking at these things in order to scale, we need to go back to our lean foundations. And this, of course, is the Toyota production system, lean thinking. And then more recently, what we found is that in large organizations, particularly that project management organizations like PMOs or even agile centers of excellence like LACES, Lean Agile Centers of Excellence, are still having a hard time, in spite of having agile teams, they're having a hard time transitioning to making sure that we can deliver value to our customers. So along the way, I've founded Lightspeed. The name sort of captures our ethos. Lithe means flexible and fast, and of course, speed means another element of fast, maybe 2x faster. So, what we've been doing is we've been helping our customers achieve all of those things that I've talked about, moving from wasteful, inefficient practices and procedures to more nimble practices and procedures, bringing their teams together, making sure that we can get value delivered across those teams, and making sure that we're always focused on the customer in true lean style.
Got it. So value management kind of includes both agile and lean and trying to get rid of waste. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
And traditional ways of working, right? So we did understand back in the day, 30, 40 years ago, there are methods called Evo. There's a gentleman called Tom Gilb. It's an agile method. And Tom Gilb has some of the best ways of measuring value. You should check it out. I would encourage
Okay.
listeners to check it out. And he's even got a sort of pseudo languages. I think it's called language that helps us define value and talk about what's now become OKRs. But yes, agile methods. I don't think have spent enough time talking about value. So, for example, here, a lot of in the early days and even now, a lot of ways that we're measuring what teams are delivering is by looking at velocity. But velocity is just an output measure. Like we say, well, teams are doing 50 points or 70 points per sprint. It has very little to no bearing on actually what gets delivered to our customers, right? So are we increasing revenue? Are we cutting costs? Are we looking at metrics like um, uh, return on investment or net present value? That's the way we should be looking at a thing, not just velocity. So agile teams, that's one sort of shortcoming there. If you look at traditional management, then back in the day when we used to measure software development, there was this incredible measure. I call it incredible because it's so what's the word, unwise to measure teams that way. Lines of code. People would say, well, how are developers? How do we measure productivity of our developers? Let's measure lines of code. So as a developer, what we would do is like, okay, we'll just copy and paste, and we'll
Yeah.
immediately double our productivity that way. We didn't do that, but we would joke about doing that, right? So gaming these metrics, especially output metrics, is so easy to do, and just measuring teams using output metrics is not the way to do it. So value management, whether you're working in traditional project management or with agile teams or now with even scaled agile methods, has to come back to the basics. It's about delivering value to our customers and to our organizations.
Right. Is that why you, Audrey Skier, and Roland Cuellar wrote the book PMO to VMO? Was that why?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Audrey Shiri and Roland Cuellar, by the way, passed away. May he rest in peace. Great. We want to continue his legacy over here. But the three of us started looking at we were working with our customers. We had implemented this concept of a value management office. Roland and I, many years ago, I want to say 2006, we had written a sort of foundational white paper. It was published by Cutter Consortium. It was called the Lean Agile PMO, and it was applying lean concepts, what has now come to be called lean portfolio management, to agile projects. And then we had started rolling those out and helping our customers adopting those practices within their agile teams and even within standard portfolio management. And then what we found was that the traditional PMOs were struggling, along with, as I mentioned, centers of excellence, agile COEs or LACEs. And we had to put out a management construct that said, here's how you manage value at the program and portfolio level. Agile teams can be working, but how do you link the work they're doing to strategy, and how do you make sure that all the work in the portfolio is visible, transparent, so that not only can we map it back to value, but then we can prioritize and adapt as we go along. So we came up with the concept of the VMO and rolled it out about 10 years ago. And then we decided to put it into writing and publish the book From PMO to VMO, Managing for Agile Delivery.
What was something surprising that you learned while writing the book? Because I read the book and I really liked it a lot. It was very kind of it's not out of the box. It's very outcomes driven. So as you're saying, like not output, look at outcomes.
Yeah.
But what was something surprising that you found while writing the book?
Well, we were surprised on at least a couple of levels. Like the first level is that very few, if anyone, is actually was talking about value or is measuring value. So even today, we say, if you go to an organization, say, how do you measure value? Most organizations don't have an answer, or they're just saying, oh, we put something in, we are putting in a business case for a project, and we're going to measure value, let's say by revenue or by cost savings and such. But they don't come back and measure that when the project is underway. In fact, even when the project is over, they don't measure it. Right? So we are very surprised that even today, and I'm saying this in 2025, the book was published in 2021. Even today, companies struggle with the notion of value and how to measure it and how to measure it in an incremental basis because it's different from long-standing capex projects versus other operational expense projects, and it's also different for product development versus services. And companies don't have a good way of measuring value, so we were surprised to find that. The other thing that we were surprised to find out is that you don't need to do a whole transformation, right? The word transformation has been bandied about quite a bit in the agile space, and it was now it's like people are talking about AI transformations in 25, whereas 10 years ago we were talking about agile transformations.
Right.
But what we need is small incremental changes, and this is what the foundational lean Toyota says, is that you're always doing kaizen, you're always doing incremental changes. Every now and then you need a larger change, larger structural change, and that's of course called kaikaku in lean. But you can get tremendous improvements, and we can get that adjustments as we go along with small incremental changes. So two things we're surprised about. One is, how do you measure value? People didn't have an answer. And then the second is like, you don't have to go a whole hog. You don't have to do a large, big batch or a big bang agile transformation, just like waterfall transformation. You can actually get better and have continuous improvement with small incremental changes.
And I like both of them because in the book, you talk about how do we go back and measure. And you give a thing that go back and measure in 30 days, in 60 days, in 90 days. And that's something that's so interesting because usually once the project goes out, you kind of don't go back and look at it. But if you do, you get so much back from it. Like you kind of figure out the ROI, and the next project that you do, you can get so much more information from it. So that was really good in the book that you um, wrote
And
about.
thank you. And not just projects, but products as well, right? So
Right.
if we have a product that we're rolling out, we
Yeah.
need to test it out in the market, see what's working, what's not working, and we can actually get much more granular about products, right? Because of the metrics tools that we have with DevOps, we can actually put in measures by feature and see which features people are using, which feature are not being used, and then we can decide at the feature level what is the incremental value of each feature, and then double down on the features that are working and reduce or eliminate the ones that are not working. Roland used to call these, the economic winners, if you will, versus economic losers. I think that we mentioned that in the book as well.
Right. And I know about you were talking about incremental improvements, and I feel like that's all it is about. And the thing to remember is when you put something in, if you're creating metrics, you have to keep updating them because right now you're measuring for what you are or where you are right now, but then once that is complete, you kind of keep looking at what other things that you can improve and making that shift to go to that next level and do that next set of metrics. So
Yeah.
great book. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add it in the DevOps community, they have this concept of telemetry. So we're
Right.
just, we can decide what we want to measure, and then we can
Right.
embed in our code, in our in our technical foundation, measurements, automatic measurements, so that we don't necessarily have to go through additional effort, and we can automate the collection of that data, and then the collation and the presentation of that data as well, using some the DevOps telemetry approaches within our products and projects.
Got it. Okay. If you could give one piece of advice to a company that's trying to move into looking at value and looking at value management, what would it be?
So for anybody who's worked with lean and lean thinking and studied Toyota or any of these lean companies, the one piece of advice would be always start with the customer and work backwards.
Yep.
Amazon, for example, there's a great book, I think it's called Working Backwards, right? They've applied the same principle. They have something that they call customer obsession. So it's not just lean from 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
You got a behemoth like Amazon, and they're basically saying it's always day one. We're always working in a manner that we're focused on the customer and we're working in a lean and adaptive way. So the one piece of advice I would give to anybody who's looking at measuring value is start with the customer, define what that value is, link it back to your strategic outcomes, and then constantly improve along the way. But always start with the customer and work backwards.
We'll start with customer. Very nice. I know that your company Lightspeed is giving out a certification now. It's Value Management Office Practitioner. So what does it focus on? Like what does it have in it?
Yeah. So what we have is actually a network of certified Agile VMO trainers. So this is something that's sponsored initially by Lightspeed, but we've created another organization called the Agile Leadership Academy. And that particular class is called the Certified Agile VMO Practitioner class. And we support and enable other trainers, not just from Lightspeed, but globally, to go out to train the 2-day class and then certify people in the VMO practices. Right? And the focus is about practical techniques to move from a traditional project management office or program management office to create a new value management office, to understand how to map value streams, to understand how to define value, and then how to set teams up so that we can enable the functioning of those teams and the delivery of value by those teams on an ongoing basis. And then to do that, there are two major focuses or two major foci. One is lean portfolio management, and the other is adaptive governance. Lean portfolio management, of course, is now familiar if you've looked at SAFe or LESS or any of these things, where we're looking at all the work in the portfolio, mapping it back to outcomes, looking at the measurement of all of the portfolio work, and then tracking and measuring that as we go along, including prioritizing and reprioritizing, usually on a quarterly basis in line with objectives and key results. Right? That's the LPM or lean portfolio management side. The second important side that we find is neglected is just overall governance, especially with the introduction of AI. So we have three, we have lean portfolio management, we have adaptive governance, but we also then have responsible AI. So with adaptive governance, we're talking about integrating stakeholders from compliance, audit, risk, legal, and architecture, making sure that a value management office can bring those stakeholders, critical stakeholders in, making sure that the other product development and project management or project delivery teams are integrating with those stakeholders, managing dependencies, making sure they're meeting the regulatory constraints. And then last but not least, as we all move towards AI, making sure we can introduce AI techniques or AI technologies in a responsible fashion, right? So making sure that the data is always carefully managed, carefully scrubbed, carefully integrated, and then integrating AI into the product side, into the developer and testing side, and into the management side.
Got it. Okay. If someone were interested in learning more about value management, are there any conferences out there right now which talk about value?
Yes. So we have a conference coming up. It is here in the Washington, D.C. area. It's called the Global Agility and Innovation Conference. It is on May 14th, 2025. And I hope everybody who's listening will make their travel plans and come and join us at the conference.
Nice. Okay. It's good to know that there's something, because it's always, everyone talks about value, but it's always under an umbrella of either product management or, under agile, but it's nice to see that there's something just for value now.
Yeah. Okay.
Lastly, this has been in the news, so I wanted to know your opinion on it. As a co-founder of PMI Agile Community of Practice and
Mhm.
of the Agile Leadership Network, what is your take on PMI joining Agile Alliance?
I think it's the other way around. I think Agile Alliance. Yeah. Right. I am strongly in support. I think it's a great move. It's going to be very valuable to both communities. I know there's pockets of resistance or people who are not necessarily in favor. Um, I this is an inevitable and in sort of inexorable move over the years, right? So Agilists can learn about more traditional project management or more robust project management because it's interesting, even the PMBOK, I think at least this is the project management body of knowledge, at least 60% or more of that is now Agile. Right? And many
Right.
Agilists don't realize how much the latest versions of the PMBOK have been influenced by agility. Right? Likewise, for the traditional project management community or just project management community, I think it'll be good for the project management community to learn about agile engineering practices, about
Right.
DevOps, about automated testing, and about traditional agile practices that are not necessarily visible when you're just looking at management, right? So there's agile engineering, there's agile development, and there's also the agile teaming, just the people side of things. And the agile community has done a great job of saying, hey, we're about a people-focused approach, and we're about values and practices over principles and processes. So so these agile values, I think, are very valuable to the PMI. So I think I'm very much strongly in support of that. In fact, at the conference that I just mentioned, we're partnering with the local PMI chapter, the PMI Washington D.C. chapter, and we'll have people from the PMI Washington D.C. chapter. We have a panel, and they'll be talking about some of this. So strongly urge you and your listeners to attend.
Thank you so much, Sanjiv. You gave so much of your time, and I know it's so valuable. So I really appreciate it, and I'm very grateful that you could be here.
Not at all. Thank you for inviting me, and glad to be sharing these thoughts with your listeners out there, Sneha. And good luck to you.
Thank you, Sanjiv.